husband, can you pop onto YouTube and see if you can hear me really quickly? Um, Picking this brain comes with the invoice. You absolutely right, big cousin. Listen, if you want to pick my brain, I gotta pick your pockets. That's just what it is. And that's very fair. Very fair. And that's a part of what I'm actually talking about today. Um, People were asking me yesterday, when it comes to the space of a cult, like what were the good things and what were the bad things. And one of the things that I definitely felt was an issue was their feeling entitled to your talent, your time, your resources beyond what you would normally volunteer to an organization that you're a part of. And I have seen marriages fall apart. I've seen people fall into depression. I've seen people fall into poverty because they're giving all of their time, talents, gifts, skills, and resources to this organization. They're feeding a beast that's not feeding them back. So we're going to get into it. But let me know. Hubs, are you on YouTube? If y'all can hear me over here on YouTube. Most of y'all have moved over to Insta, which is all good. Okay, you can hear me? Perfect. Are you sure you're not just hearing me in the house? Okay. I'm gonna go with you can hear me. All right. So tonight we are discussing the lesser of okay, perfect. The lesser of two evils, and how sheep become wolves. Because one of the recurring questions that came up yesterday when I said I was going to go live about this topic, and after even, was did you know it was a cult? Did you realize it was a cult? Do they call themselves a cult? Do they label themselves a cult? Most cults do not label themselves cults. Most cults can never be convinced that they are cults, actually. But there are some very distinct signs that an organization or a situation is a cult. And I mean, if you check the boxes, you check the boxes. If the shoe fits, the shoe fits. Um, but one of the things that came up to me as I was just pondering on how I would approach this topic is oftentimes when a person fashions themselves a hero and they see themselves as someone who is meant to save their people, whoever those people may be. It could be, a hero at the job who is, unionizing and leading the charge in that. And then they find themselves in a leadership position. Many times, when you are positioned as the lesser of two evils, you become an abuser. Not always intentionally, but it can be a natural progression. So, I'm going to talk about that today. Um, what I thought were the good things, what I thought were the not so good things, and try to give a balanced view, because one of the things that I know the people who are still in this organization who are watching this are saying to themselves, and probably are saying at the screen, is, well, it's not that bad. It's the world is much worse. Would you rather be in the world? Someone on the live was saying that yesterday. Would you rather go back to paganism? And what's very interesting is when you are on a journey, a spiritual journey especially, you have to be mindful of your worldview, because many times um, these types of groups and organizations and communities will appeal to an unhealthy worldview, but because it resonates with a part of you that maybe is afraid, that maybe is ashamed, that maybe is fearful of the future, that maybe is disillusioned by the world, because it appeals to that part of you, you're going to be drawn to it. So you have to be mindful of your worldview. What is coloring your worldview? Um, I was listening to a lady today who also escaped a cult herself, but it was a political cult. And she was talking about how most people who join cult movements are idealists. They have this idea of the world, and the group or the organization or the information that they are becoming a follower of or a believer in, because a cult is marked by believers. The thing that they're becoming a believer in, they see that as an answer to those ideals that they have. They see that as a way to achieve the ideals that they have. This is how smart people end up in these situations, because to have ideals, you need to be thinking, you need to have perspective, you need to have an opinion on things. You can't just be a blind follower. Most cult leaders do not want dumb people following them, not at first, at least. They need that first line of people who are smart, who are influential, who are charismatic as well, who have that pull and that magnetism to draw other people in. So, realizing that how you are viewing the world, people can manipulate you based on that. Organizations, situations can manipulate you based on that. You have to stay grounded in, what do I actually believe? What do I actually feel? What do I know? What do you know? Okay. Because what we see happening, whether it's politically or spiritually, are these cult movements that appeal to our desire to be a part of something, first of all, to belong, but also they position themselves as the lesser of two evils. So spiritually, all religions, I don't care what it is positioning itself as a better alternative to what they see as a wicked world. Okay. And if you believe that inherently the world is wicked, we are wicked as human beings, we are wicked as individuals, then you are going to be drawn to something that says it is an answer to that wickedness. What's very dangerous about that is when an entity, a person, or anything is positioning itself as the lesser of two evils. Oftentimes that entity can inflict any kind of harm or abuse or manipulation onto you if that is the basis of your decision making. Well, at least it's not that. Well, at least it's the lesser of two evils. If you are not making decisions from a place of power, realizing you don't have to choose evil, you don't have to choose something that goes against your spirit, something that goes against your knower, you can build something completely separate, that you can gather with people who are like-minded to you and build something that is an alternative to these evil options that you're given, then you will be in a position where you're vulnerable to whatever that lesser evil decides is good enough for you. And they'll constantly say, well, at least it's not that. Well, you could be out in the world. Well, you're dealing with your man uh putting his hands on you in the church, but what if you were dealing with a man in the world that was doing it? And you find yourself justifying your own abuse. And so while on the good side of that experience and organization, and all organizations in that space, there is this um facade of brotherhood, sisterhood, community, family, order, even. Underneath it, you find yourself in conflict and having to say, well, I mean, he is the man of God. So I guess when he did it, it's okay. I guess he's going to repent in his own time. I guess and, and you can be following a wolf off the side of a cliff. Simple as that. Because you chose what was the lesser of two evils rather than truly trusting your connection to God, your connection to the divine, and the divinity within you to create something that is truly upright. So I'll get into a little bit of what I felt. Someone asked yesterday, what do you feel like they got right and what do you feel like they got wrong? I'll speak to it from a broader perspective than just this one organization because I can see patterns very well. And I see how this organization is literally just using patterns that have worked across the board in other spaces. Um, and the things that they are getting right are things that all cults get right. Whether they are political cults, whether they are religious cults, whether they are technological cults, whatever it is, these are things that they all get right. And if you want to avoid being swept up, these are things to be mindful of, especially while you're on your healing journey, while you're on your spiritual journey, while you are exploring, because cults and charismatic leaders, these people, entities, etc., have existed much longer than all of us. They have existed for millennia at this point. And so the tactics and strategies that are used are things that have worked and will continue to work. Um, while you are on your journey, sometimes you are vulnerable and you don't realize it. Sometimes attacks come as things that are not nefarious on the surface, very benign, very family, community oriented. And then you get on the inside, and those things can be used against you. So, the first thing I'll say that they got right for sure is their marketing. The marketing is on point. Anytime you are choosing an audience of people who are traumatized, pressing on that pain point is a part of all marketing. And often in the religious space, there is such a variety of pain points that we have, from our own shames and traumas to the ways that we feel government is running society. There are so many pain points. Poverty is a pain point that religion presses on. There's so many pain points, and in this specific group, and most Hebrew Israelite groups, as well as most cult like groups that market to Black people, um, they press on that trauma. They press on the reality of our situation globally, not even just here in America. They press on that pain, and then everything that they present to you after that becomes, well, it's not America. It's not bondage and captivity. It's not slavery. It's not, um, and much like people are saying about deconstructing Christianity, if the only other option that you are implanting in my psyche is hellfire, then I am not actually choosing. If the only other option that you are giving me is death, then I'm not actually choosing. And what I realized in my own journey is that death is not the only other option. We were not put here by an infinite creator to live in duality, to live in constant division, to live in constant warfare. There's a reason why we are in constant war, and it is much bigger than we're being told, but that's not what we're here for. And many of these organizations and spaces market to that inner turmoil, that inner division, and the dichotomies that we see in life that end up traumatizing us in many ways. So their marketing for sure is on point. The community aspect of it, I feel, is something that they in some ways get right. At the very minimum, creating communities where people can come and meet. I'm not here to tell you to leave anybody's fellowship or whatever have you. Do what works for you, for sure. Um, so I will tell you that that is a part that I won't say gets right, but it's a part that can be very beneficial. It's almost like college. Like you go for networking, but you don't get along with everybody. You don't, you know some of the groups are fake, but there's that one diamond in the rough, who's that one friend that you meet who's like, yes, this is my person. It gives opportunity for that, to meet those people, to connect with those people, and to form those bonds that transcend the organization. What I will say too, though, is that I have seen folks have their hearts broken because they formed these bonds and friendships on a human level. And um, when they decided to move forward on their journey, when they decided that, it was time for something new, those friends fully identified as members of the cult, and that is it. And anybody outside of the cult, they did not deal with. And so they lost those friendships. So I have seen people's hearts be broken by that, but I've also seen folks who their bond literally transcended whatever happened within the space. So the community aspect, I definitely see as something that they got right. Another aspect that I see that they got right, that I can't say it's a good thing, but as a um, as a person who majored in psychology, minored in sociology, uh, they got the psychology right. Cults know their stuff when it comes to messing with the human mind, when it comes to inspiring devotion, when it comes to cultivating true believers, which is again a telltale sign of a cult. When it comes to the psychology of power and power dynamics, they definitely got that right. Now, I won't say that that's a good thing, but I will say that it is something that they got is sticking. Okay. I've seen people in that space who don't make a decision within their own household, within their own marriage, without first consulting with um an elder or someone like that. And Christ himself said not to let any man lord over you. So I'm not sure why they feel that need, but what I will say is we are a fatherless community by large percentages, and these men often position themselves as your fathers. And so many people feel comforted by relinquishing their freedoms, by relinquishing their independence, by relinquishing their thought to someone that they believe can make better decisions than them, can think better than them, has more experience, or whatever have you. I tend to be an observer, um, and so I observe these kinds of things, and I sit back and I ask myself, is this person someone that I would trust as a father? And then I watch their life. And in general, you can tell if a man specifically is trustworthy by the countenance of the women around them. Um, and I don't mean having a quiet countenance. Is that woman safe to speak? Is that woman safe to express herself? Is she safe to have needs and desires? Um, and what those power dynamics look like. So, and I've seen a lot of that in that space. Um, on the flip side of that, what I saw personally that was detrimental rather than being beneficial to the people who were engaged, um, was this obligation to feed the beast, this obligation that you are required to give yourself over to this entity. Your resources, gifts, skills, talents, whatever have you. To the degree that, and I mentioned this yesterday, um, when we decided to leave, it was the nail or the straw that broke the camel's back was one of the high up leaders stealing from a member and stealing a lot. It wasn't just kind of like I stole a couple dollars. It was like I stole several thousands of dollars. I have been living in a house of yours. I've been driving your car. I've been not paying you. I locked you out of your business. It was a lot for this man who was considered the father of this congregation, or one of the fathers of this congregation. And it spoke to the character of that person, but it also spoke to the character of the people who were not holding him accountable, who had, to that point, upheld him in his poor behavior for 20 some odd years, and kept it hidden from the people. And I, again, liken these things to a toxic relationship. When you are in a relationship with a narcissist, and anyone who has been in a relationship with a narcissist knows this, you spend a lot of time covering for them. You spend a lot of time keeping the facade up. You spend a lot of time making sure it looks good. You spend a lot of time justifying their actions and behaviors. And when I saw that, it alerted me seriously to the fact that this is not the only thing that's being covered up. This is not the beginning of this kind of behavior. Meanwhile, we as members, our congregants are held to standards that leaders are not even upholding. So much came out at that time from this leader specifically. And this leader was someone that, and my husband will tell his own story in his own time because it's not my story to tell. But someone that my husband had seriously looked up to. And I think that any man in that congregation at that time held this man to such high regard that they really looked at him as a father, as a man of God, as the example of who to be and how to be. And all of it was a facade. All of it was a facade. All of it was a facade. And so many things have happened since then that have decreased transparency around what's going on, that have close the door so members have even less understanding of what's happening amongst leadership. So now you really don't know what's leading you, but it's being presented under the banner of, but this is the man of God, so don't say anything towards or about the man of God. Don't question the man of God. You're out of line if you're questioning the man of God. And that's manipulation, simple and plain. So that was one thing. The fact that there were systems in place for control, and there are still systems in place for control. There's a dating system. You can't just date who you want to date. You can't any of that. There are wardrobe systems. You cannot wear what you want to wear. And all of these things can be justified in some way and say, well, we're just trying to save our people. We're just trying to whatever have you. If you feel like you need to be saved, my love, do what you feel you need to do. But that is not everyone's journey. It's just not. But the systems of controlling men and their time and what they're giving or not giving. Every church, every religion has a system of controlling your finances in some way, because if you're not tithing, they want to know why. um, these systems of control are in place, but there are no systems of growth. And as someone who works in nature, who gardens, yes, you need to have systems where you're keeping pests at bay and you're making sure that things are nice and neat and all of that. But you also need to give those plants room to grow. And I have seen several people's goals, dreams, visions deferred in that space because the leadership didn't feel like it was their time. Even if their spirit said it's time to move, leadership feels like you need to just wait. We have to answer for that. If you are truly a believer, you know that you will have to answer for sitting on the calling and the nudge of the spirit because some man told you it wasn't time yet. And it's one of the reasons you might, for those of you who've been following me for a while all of this was going down, one of the things that I was really passionate about speaking about on this platform was making sure that you are not putting your gifts in the hands of shepherds who cannot steward them. So many of us trust, and that goes for your spouse, that goes for your pastor, that goes for whoever. So many of us trust the gifts that God gave us to people who do not have the equipment to handle those gifts, to steward those gifts, to grow and develop those gifts. And the thing is, you're not going to be able to stand before the divine when it's all said and done and say, well, I had to submit to my husband, God. You are the feminine and you have influence. I'm specifically talking to women here. You are the feminine and you have influence. And you are waiting for authority, which is a lesser version of influence. Anywho, so there were systems in place that were systems of control, and there are systems in place that are systems of control but not systems of growth. And listen, I've seen it with my own two eyes. I know folks are going to justify and say, oh, but I'm growing. Okay. Let's see. I took some notes, so I'm trying to make sure that I hit all the points. Kyla Harris says, yeah, I remember back when you used to coach me in 2018-19, I was bashed by some members of the organization. Not sure if it was the same one for coaching with you, and that was a red flag. Oh, I already know. And what's so important is if a person has to turn off your light to get you to do something, to get you to stay somewhere, that is not somewhere you need to be. If you have to be bashed and dragged and you need tough love and all this other stuff in order to stay in an environment, in order to grow in an environment, that isn't somewhere you need to be. But hey, maybe that is where you need to be. Maybe that's what you need on your soul's journey. I'm not here to judge that. I just know that for me, I did not need to be there. Because another thing is the unchecked and imbalanced power and leadership in the space. There is no room for women to speak up, have a voice, even if you are an expert and you are dealing with a bunch of men who are daggone novices, not even novices. You have to defer to them. And what ends up happening, and what I have seen happen a lot, is the women have to sit on the train as it crashes. They just got to sit there and be quiet as the train crashes. While all of the scandal and extortion and all of these things were going on, the women had to sit on the train as it crashed. Those who decided to stay. After as the big extortion scandal situation was happening, another big scandal came out that was dealing with a young woman. And this was For me, okay, when I have been in a space for a minute, I am a person who is a very devoted, committed, dedicated person. Um, Sometimes it takes a few confirmations for me to say, okay, this is it. So while the extortion thing was the nail in the coffin, and I was like, this is a no for me. The way that it's being handled is a no for me. The partiality is a no for me. The character is a no for me. It's all a no for me. I still was kind of like, but maybe let me just see. I don't know what. Y'all know. A young lady came up missing in from the UK class or school, because there's schools all over. And it turned out to be one of the men there who were working their way up the leadership ladder, working their way up the hierarchy, who was married. Um, he kidnapped her and unalived her. And he lied about it for a very long time. He still to this day has not shared where her body is. It just so happens that a hiker found her. And that was like more than a year after her demise. The way that they stood beside this man, the way that they handled their congregation, I won't go into detail, was sick. It was disgusting. And for me to see women perpetuate that kind of behavior and justify it and stand beside it, for me, there was no hope for that kind of situation, because this is one of your little ones. This is one of your innocents. This is one of your women that you say that you are so hard about protecting and providing for and all of these things. And this is where we are. Um, so I said no, it's not gonna work for me at all. And then following that, other women, for I don't know why or what was going on, but there was something maybe on me or in me at the time that was attracting women who were, because I wasn't really talking about leaving the group or anything like that. I was just like, I'm a quietly kind of skeet on over to the side, skate to the side. But um women started reaching out to me with their stories. And they were reaching out to me with stories that disgusted me. They were reaching out to me with stories that were abuses that I have been working with women and observing relationship for a very long time. I'm only 35, so there's that. But my whole life basically. And I hadn't heard these kinds of abuses or seen these kinds of abuses in the world. Um and I realized that, and every woman had a similar storyline where she said, I went through this situation with my husband. I knew that it was wrong. I went to the leadership and told the leadership about it. They kind of gave me the runaround a little bit. Then they called us in for counsel and they didn't want to hear anything I had to say. And they took my husband's side. And he just got worse after that. And I was like, this is a very interesting situation, because we know that power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if there were constantly um, systems being put in place for more power, but none being put in place for more accountability, something was absolutely wrong. Let me see. Go over to YouTube. I'm not sure why the sound keeps going out on IG. I'm not sure at all. Hold on one second, YouTube. Okay. Hop on over to the YouTube channel. And I'm just going to leave that up for a short time. Let me also grab something really quick for this setup. All right. Because maybe this will help with the sound over here. I'm not sure why it keeps going out on Insta. It went out on Instagram yesterday as well. Let's see. Maybe that'll fix it. Okay. Let me know, Insta, if that fixes anything. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So some of you have come over to YouTube. Welcome to the party. Waves. Hey. Oh, hi, Feminine Melanin University. And do like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for acting as moderator over here. But yes, what I was saying was, I noticed that there continue to be systems that were being put in place to expand the power of the leadership, but not to expand accountability. And one of the things that I can say about churches, individual churches, I can speak to, I can't speak to the church, the overall church, because that's a whole nother monster. But churches generally have processes, systems, programs in place where they are helping and feeding the community around them. On the alternative side, when we look at cults, when we look at the overall church, it is a beast that does not feed the people. It expects the people to feed it. And whether that's your talent, whether that's your resources, your money, your time, it expects you to feed it. And that is how it sustains itself. And so systems will continue to be put in place that prioritize that. But I was not seeing systems be put in place that prioritize people. For example, within this Hebrew Israelite space, you are encouraged to homeschool. You are encouraged to heal yourself at home. You're encouraged to engage in self sufficiency and self sustaining behaviors. And we clearly were all in. We've had 3 of our children at home. All of our children are homeschooled still to this day. And we grow food at home. We heal ourselves with herbs and plants, and it's actually been wonderful. Our children are world school. They travel and eat and do all kinds of things. So that's wonderful for us. That is not due to the organization or the lifestyle. That's due to our own personal ambitions, that if we're going to live this lifestyle, we're going to do it in a way that is comfortable, that is supported, that is, put together. Overall, though, that was not the reality for most of the people in most of the schools across the nation and now across the world. And so one of the things that I was constantly, I mean, every time I could get a word in, I was mentioning, hey, weren't we putting together a homeschool curriculum? What's going on with the homeschool curriculum? Do y'all need help getting teachers together? How are we moving along with the homeschool curriculum? And it never came to fruition. But are there is there a curriculum for the hierarchy and the power structure? Yes. Is there a methodology for how they are bringing people in and keeping them in and holding them and all these things? Yes. And as a business person, I know that those things take a lot of strategy. Are the children not that important? Is having a medical clinic in every city not that important? Is having health curriculum so that we understand if you're going to tell folks to be self sustaining, we need some knowledge and education on that. And just a few here and there is not enough if to say, oh, we did a class over in Tennessee one time on that. That's not enough if you are able to implement a nationwide curriculum to create soldiers and captains and deacons and bishops and all of these other things. Not if you are encouraging people to have as many babies as possible. Not if you are encouraging people to homeschool their children. There needs to be a prioritization on how are we educating these children? How are we setting them up for a solid future? But oftentimes in these spaces, just like in the American society that is hungry for power, that is hungry for your gifts, your talent, your time, your resources, the goal is not to create self sustaining individuals. The goal is to create more followers. That's why, yes, have all the children you can possibly have and teach them and program them in the same lifestyle and methodology so that they follow me too. Not let me create sovereign citizens who are able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I don't mean sovereign like you don't have a license plate. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are able to be solid contributors to their family, to themselves, to their community, to their society. People who are able to have a healthy world view because they're not looking at the world as us versus them. They're looking at what they can create and produce in the world to change what we're seeing. So there are no systems in place for that. There are no systems in place for that kind of growth, other than how are you going to grow to continue to feed the group, the nation, as they call it. But no nation is self sustaining on its own. I don't care who it is. Okay. And if you're not teaching communications, diplomacy, these things, you are crippling people. You are crippling people because a lot of folks are able to do business within that space amongst people that they know, but they're not able to do business in the larger world. A lot of them are able to build connections and relationships within that space, but they're not able to gain the resources that they need to survive in the material world. And any space where you are seeing the leaders constantly encouraging you and coercing you to tithe, but you are not being supported during something like a pandemic, during something like the world shutting down. You're being told, lean on the government. Meanwhile, this organization has been leaning on you. You should be questioning that. And that's just the facts of the matter. And I know that I am not saying anything that a thinker has not already been going over in your mind, justifying for yourself, quieting that little voice in the back of your head. I'm just saying it out loud. All right. So those are my thoughts on what are the things that they got right? What are the things that they got wrong? Or I wouldn't even say right and wrong in that way. What are the things that were effective or beneficial, and what are the things that were detrimental? The beneficial things, not all of them were beneficial for the people. Some of them were only beneficial for the organization, but they got the benefit. And the things that were detrimental really are detrimental across the board. And that's not, I'm like I said in the beginning, this is not just about that specific organization. This is across the board. If we look into there is a friend of mine left a voice note today, and she's like, I encourage you in what you're doing. And as you expand on this conversation, think about all the cults that exist, all of the areas of our life where we are blindly devoted to ideas, where we are blindly devoted to traditions, where we are devoted to ways of doing things, not because we have made an informed decision to be there, but because we just don't well, that's the way it's always been, or that's the way that my mama did it, or that's what the pastor said, that's what it says, so that's what I have to do. And you're not critically investigating these things. So look inside of it, y'all. Open it up and look inside and see if it's truly what you desire for yourself, if it is truly beneficial for you in the long term, if it is truly contributing to the growth of your soul, not just your ego. Because a lot of us have our soul and our ego gravely confused. And that's just the reality. A lot of us think that we are doing things that nurture and develop our souls, and we are truly nurturing and developing a strong ego, a strong sense of us versus them. And that's not leading us anywhere. The fear that is put within us, and this is why I said the lesser of two evils method of decision making is always going to put you in a position where you are being abused, um, because that fear of us versus them, we have to be right, they have to be wrong. I know the truth, they don't know the truth. We're going to get into the kingdom, they're not going to get into the kingdom. Do we or do we not believe Christ? When Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So, being sold on this fear that if you leave the congregation, you're not going to get in the kingdom. So, are you going to walk away from yourself? Because what's going on here? And in that space, I heard so many times, oh my goodness, I heard them say so many times, if you leave, if you turn your back on us, you're turning your back on God. If you're walking away, you're walking away from the kingdom. What? And the closer it got to the end for me, the more that message was being said. And I don't like to be manipulated. I don't like to be manipulated. I was raised by a narcissist, and that shit is for the birds. When you are an adult and you see the patterns, you have a choice. And as an adult, I am so grateful. I saw a meme the other day that said the best part about being an adult is the ability to leave. I am so grateful that I can get up and walk away from things that are not supportive, that are not beneficial, that are not conducive, even if they feel good, because that's the thing that keeps a lot of people. Well, it's not that bad. Well, it's not that. If your spirit is telling you to move, you better move. That's all I can say. If your spirit is telling you to move, you better move. And I'm not even going to say things will get better when you move. Sometimes they don't, but it's time for you to move. All right. So I hope that you got what you needed. I did stay on over here on Instagram. I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but there are 7 people over here on Instagram. So I'm assuming I'm assuming that someone can hear me if you are on the live. I can only assume. I'm getting hearts, so I'm assuming that y'all can hear me. I know y'all can hear me over here on Instagram. I mean on YouTube. I'm not getting as many questions today, so I won't hold y'all if y'all don't have any questions. Um, But I know, like, yesterday the questions were coming and coming and coming, and I get it because I'm the last person you probably would expect to end up in a situation like this. And really, at the time, it wasn't, I won't even say, I was abused so bad or anything like that, which again, people who are still in the organization are probably like, well, it's not happening to me, it's not happening to in my house or in our school, so I can't even worry about all that. That's fine if that's what works for you. But that's just not what works for me. I cannot watch collective abuse happen and sit by and watch it happen. That is not the path that my soul is destined for in this lifetime. I have been given an amazing ability to speak, and to speak up for things, and to relay very heavy topics in a way that doesn't feel so heavy. And so that's what I'm going to do. I believe the Proverbs 31, where the mother is telling her son, pleading the cause of the needy is a virtue. And I do believe that that is a virtue. And so I will do that. There are a lot of women in these spaces who cannot speak up, or feel that they cannot speak up, feel that they have no voice. And even if you are a person who believes the Bible is the unerring word of God, there are too many instances in the Bible where men had no idea how to overcome an obstacle, and it was the women who stood up, spoke up, and saved the day. And so I'm not going to sit by in a situation where I see women are being abused, where I see children are being abused, where I see men are being abused, and manipulated, and not say anything about it. And that's just that on that. All right. So I don't have any questions today. There is someone on um Instagram who wants to come up. I mean, y'all wouldn't be able to see it over here on YouTube, but y'all could hear it. So let me see. Natasha, I'll welcome you on if you have a question that you want to share, or a story or a thought. Um, but yes, yes, yes. Let's see. Nothing over here on YouTube. Let me check, double check. I think that is it. Be mindful that one of the markers of a cult is a transcendental belief system. So a belief system that says the world is this chaotic, terrible, awful place, and what we have, the truth that we have, will allow you to transcend that. It will answer all of those ills, it will change all of that for you. Because I'm gonna just tell the truth, what I saw was the behaviors that they were initially telling you, look at what's happening in the world. We're not doing that over here. You get on the inside and you realize they're doing the same thing. They just have fringes and head wraps on. Like, literally the same toxic, abusive behaviors that you find in worldly relationships were happening in that space. It just wearing a different uniform, just wearing a different uniform, the same mess, the same scandal, the same gossiping, the same backbiting, the same stealing, the same murder, the same adultery, the same malice, the same jealousy, was just wearing a different uniform. So there is no us versus them until people start to heal and cleanse and purify what's going on inside of them individually. And folks that I watched being there for years and years and years and years and years, their life didn't change, their mind didn't change, nothing changed. You're not purifying within. just because you're learning more scriptures, just because you're eating different foods, just because you're wearing different clothing, just because you're checking all of these boxes. And when I stepped away from that space, and this is a lot of people's experience, I met truly godly people. This isn't to say that truly godly people didn't exist in that space, but the volume of them that I met outside of organized religion, the volume of people who truly know God, who truly believe God, who truly engage with God and with others in a godly way, and with the earth and with the land in a godly way on a regular basis, the volume of people that I met with those traits outside of organized religion greatly expanded. Because one of the things we have to realize in organized religions is that we are allowing these books that we read to justify atrocities that are happening all over the world. We are watching atrocities, real life atrocities, and we are saying, well, that's prophecy. The kingdom of heaven is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you, even if that is prophecy, even if the end and the destruction and all of that is prophecy. The world that will exist after that is not going to come out of nowhere. It's going to come from within you. It's going to come from within us as the people. And so I just could no longer sit by and watch and wait for everything to be destroyed and justify that through God, when God gave man dominion of this earth and told us to take care of it, told us to take care of each other. And we are sitting by, allowing in our own backyards, in our own congregations, children, women, the land to be abused. I wasn't going to do it. And if it's fine with you, that's fine for you. But my soul didn't come here for that. My soul didn't come here to stroke some man's ego and make him feel like, oh, you the man just because you a man. My husband, the praise that y'all see me give this man is because he is worth every bit of it. Every bit of it. My husband is a man who any woman, child, animal, insect, plant is safe around this man. He is a true man after God's heart. And so when I walked into that space, every man had to live up to that. And if you were not on his level, don't tell me nothing. You tell my husband, and he'll come and tell me. I'm not engaging with you because I'm gonna make you mad, and I've gotten kicked out of better places. Okay. So there is, and I've read this about narcissists. They require the authority of a king with the accountability of a toddler. I saw it way too much in those religious spaces. I saw it way too much. Men who, just because I am a man, and child, listen, I grew up around some very, very strong men who made me a very clear and powerful woman. And let's see, facts. My fiance Kyle, for real, is that how it's pronounced? Says I left that group a couple years ago and I feel so much more free. And that's just the truth. I am seeing so many sisters share their story now, because truthfully, leaving that space, especially for those of us who left during the scandals, there was a lot of grief. There was a huge amount of grief. There was a huge amount of healing of religious trauma that needed to happen before any of us, I know for myself, before I felt comfortable coming and talking about it. I'm a person who has always said, I will not bleed on y'all. If it's still bleeding, I'm not going to come to y'all and talk about it. I have a therapist, I have friends, I have family members, I have a spouse, I have people that I process things with. I have a journal, I have my prayer space. Too many options to be processing with, strangers online who, not to call y'all strangers, but honestly and truly, I don't know what y'all are going through. I don't know what capacity you have. So when I come into this online space to have a conversation with you, it's usually from a place of, I've healed it. Maybe you're experiencing it, or maybe you're just interested in hearing about it. Let's talk about it. But yeah, it took some time, and I'm seeing a lot of women finally feel, after 5 years, that they are ready to step up and say something, because there was a lot of abuse happening in that space. And the crazy part about it is that the men set up the system, just like naturally in the masculine and feminine. The masculine sets the structure, sets the foundation, and the feminine maintains it. The women maintain the abuse in that space. The women maintain and not all of them, because I know, y'all, not everybody, I guess. But if you are silent in it, you are complicit in it. The women almost feel a sense of honor and pride in oppressing other women and checking other women, and in this whole "you out of the spirit" vibe, when truthfully, I'm expressing myself. And just because my expression makes you uncomfortable, or just because it's something that you have been sweeping under the rug, does not mean that I am obligated to sweep it under the rug, or that I am obligated to swallow what needs to be said. Um, Kyle says, I'm so much grief. I'm still coming out of old thought patterns, but I'm so much better. The Most High is not bound to what these men box him men oh yeah, try to box him into. There's a like emoji icon here that was covering your words. And that's so true. When you step away from these spaces, and sometimes what people realize is that they deconstruct their religion to get back to their religion. They deconstruct it to get back to the essence of why they are believing or walking or doing that in the first place. If your foundation is strong, it can stand up to that. Um, but what a lot of people realize when they walk away from these spaces is that God is so much bigger than all of these boxes, all of these rules, all of these things. Universal law, if you are living according to universal law, you are fine. Literally, even the Bible tells you the law was created for people who are transgressing the universal laws. The biblical law is created because people could not stop transgressing the universal laws. And I could go into that because there's historical evidence of what men were doing back then, of what all kinds of things were going on back then. But that was needed because we were wilding as humanity. There are people who live their life according to the laws that govern it all. And that is more than enough, because if you're living your life by universal law, you know that what you reap, you sow. What you sow, you reap. You know that there is an equal and opposite reaction for every action. You know that for every cause, there is an effect. You know the laws of compensation. You know these things. So you're taking action based on what you want to bring back, what you want to see happen, what you want to create more of. So there's that. Okay. Kyle says we're back to learning with a different mindset. Still believe we're the people of the book, but that's just a piece of the puzzle and not the end all be all. There's more to this. Exactly. And what does that mean? For me, telling me that we're the people of the book and we are in the position that we're in because of transgressing the law, and that the very tangible consequences we are experiencing are a result of that. But then on the other side of that, saying, but there are no you got to believe more, you got to trust more, you got to whatever more to get the tangible reward. Not if my creator said that I have dominion in this realm. Show me how to exercise my dominion. Show me how to activate my power as a co-creator in this realm. Because sitting by and waiting for destruction to happen so that prophecy can play out, and not knowing how to activate the creator within you that is going to replenish this world, what is the point? You might as well go with the destruction. Yes, they only read the curses, never the list of blessings. And that's very true. And there's so many things that can be said beyond that, because again, we are still reading from a corrupted document. That is just the facts of the matter. It doesn't matter how many ways we can spin it and say, but there are good parts to it. There are good parts to the cult. I just shared that today. There's good in everything. And me as a Scorpio, listen, baby, I can find the silver lining on any cloud. And I can also be real and say that I don't need to be participating and engaging with everything just because there's some good parts to it. I'm sure every serial killer out there had a good side. He went and gave his mom flowers on Mother's Day too. He took his neighbor's dog and walked the dog when they needed it too. He brought their mail in when they needed it. Everybody got a good side. Everything has a good side. So, you know, choose what works for you, what's right for you, what supports you, but also do not be married to these things. Nothing in this world is the end all be all. Nothing. Nobody has the complete story. So be willing to allow yourself to move when your spirit says it's time to move, to grow when your spirit says it's time to grow, and not to be afraid of being ostracized by men. Because if we're telling the truth, a greater fear than hell for people is being kicked out of a community. Many people fear that more than they fear the pits of hell and the fire and brimstone. We fear not being accepted. We fear not belonging. And we stay in places and we stay in situations longer than we need to because we are afraid of leaving and not having community. But there are more communities out here for you. There are more communities that exist. And any community that is telling you that to be a part of this community, you have to cut off every other community. You can't be dealing with anybody else outside of this community. They are crippling you. They are hindering your growth. There are people that you are supposed to meet that you are not meeting. There are connections that you are supposed to make that are for your destiny that you're missing out on because you're allowing some man who's not even driving his purpose correctly to drive yours. That's all I'm saying. So, with that, it's not going to be another 2-hour live today, y'all. I think we have had a long enough conversation on this. I will continue the conversation and come back with more topics on this. I definitely want to hold space for my husband to come on and share his perspective. For the brothers out there who may be in a position where you're wondering, what's next for you or how to take that step or what it feels like on the other side. I definitely want to open the floor for ladies and others who are wanting to share their story. A couple of y'all have reached out to me in my inbox and have said that you are ready to share your story. So I want to open the floor for y'all to come on as well. So I'm going to continue this conversation. I don't want Feminine Success to become like the cult channel at all. But I do want to continue revisiting this conversation on freedom, revisiting this conversation on reclaiming yourself, reclaiming your autonomy, reclaiming your purpose, reclaiming your divine connection, and all of the things that stand in the way of that freedom. I am hosting a retreat in November, Divine Recollection, for those of you who want to support yourself and who want to connect with me deeper in this way. We're going to Costa Rica. We will have some healing experiences there as well as some luxurious experiences because y'all know me. But that is in November. I will make sure to put the link here on YouTube. And then if you're on Instagram, it's in the bio. But yeah, we are taking this conversation of spiritual freedom and reconnecting yourself, recollecting the parts of yourself that you lose to these experiences, that you silence for these experiences, bringing those back to the forefront to really stand as your whole self. We are not just having the conversations, but we're also creating an experience around that. So yeah, I'm not going to keep going. I am probably about to enjoy this storm that we're about to have here in New Orleans. If you have thoughts or questions, or you just need someone to share your experience with, my inbox is open. Anything that I share here on the live, I will ask your permission for, and I will share anonymously if that is something that, if it's something I feel will benefit folks, not just like talking. But I want to, oh Lord, my cousin says, preach well. Listen, that is beautiful coming from my good minister cousin, my good elder. But yes, anyone that needs support in this area, that needs to know, the conversation in that space is constantly, God only works through men, God only works with men, and you as the woman should just sit down, be quiet, and be that man's helper. Y'all, that is not why God designed you as a woman. And if you need a sermon around that really gives you biblical foundation for that understanding, I highly recommend Dr. Miles Monroe's sermon on the purpose and power of woman. It is available here on YouTube, if you're on Instagram. And if you have been in the feminine success realm at all, that is required reading. He also has a book that my clients have all had to read, The Purpose and Power of Woman, because God did not design you for this BS that men are trying to tell you that you are designed for, to just sit by and help him while he crashes the train. Not every man is crashing the train. I know this, but a lot of them are. So The Purpose and Power of Woman by Dr. Miles Monroe is a resource that I highly recommend. Peace and love, y'all.